So is it possible the Wuhan Institute has viruses or conducted experiments that they never published?
Yes.
And the samples are still in the custody of the Wuhan Institute?
Well, unless they're not. But to the last of my knowledge, they were in the freezers in Wuhan.
Is
and
there
over 15,000 of them. Okay, so it's possible that they have hidden some viruses from us that we don't know about, yes.
All right.
Of course.
I appreciate that.
Hello everyone, welcome to Brave Hearts with Sean Ling. So in our first episode, we exposed the federal conspiracy of Dr. David Moran's and the multi-million-dollar funding network that shared his primary partner. But buried within the mountains of evidence seized by federal investigators is a single chilling sentence written by EcoHealth Alliance President Peter Daszak on April 26, 2020. David, no problem. From now on, Gmail only, and we have 15,000 samples in freezers in Wuhan. 15,000 viral samples. This is not a hypothetical number on the spreadsheet. These are physical vials containing dangerous pathogens, and it is a taxpayer-funded viral arsenals sitting in the foreign laboratories. In today's program, we will address the structural black hole of global virus hunting. Why did the United States government pay for everything, yet fail to secure even the basic inventory when the global pandemic erupted? And where does Peter Daszak stand now as the gears of federal justice continue to turn? So let's open the black box. Those 15,000 samples were the year of a decade-long international pathogen hunting campaign. Deep inside the bat caves of southern China, EcoHealth researchers collected tens of thousands of bat saliva, fecal, and blood samples. This massive collection drive was sustained by two primary pipelines of American taxpayers' money. First one is the NIH pipeline. Under the grant R01 AI110964, EcoHealth funneled over $598,000 in federal sub-awards directly to Wuhan Institute of Virology, WIV. The contract explicitly earmarked these funds for field collection, genomic sequencing, and cold chain maintenance and quality control of sample storage. The second pipeline is the USAID pipeline under the Global Pandemic Prevention Initiative called PREDICT. The US government channeled approximately $1.1 million to the Wuhan lab. So in total, American taxpayers sent over $1.7 million to the Wuhan Institute of Virology. We pay for the field gears, the cold chain shipping, and even the electricity running those Wuhan freezers. Yet during his May 2024 congressional hearing, when Peter Daszak was pressed under oath about the location and availability of these physical samples, his response exposed a jaw-dropping regulatory loophole.
And the samples are still in the custody of the Wuhan Institute?
Well, unless they're not. But to the last of my knowledge, they were in the freezers in Wuhan.
Is
and
there
over 15,000 of them.
Doctor, do you have physical access to the bat samples the Wuhan Institute of Virology previously collected under your grant? Simple yes or no will suffice.
Sadly, we do not. We were very clear that the samples collected with US taxpayers' money, because of the geopolitical issues and our grant being terminated, are now unable to be taken out of that lab. We were told that by the Chinese authorities.
The US government have fully financed a massive repository of high-risk viruses, but the physical specimens, the raw laboratory notebooks, the ultimate control remain entirely in the hands of a foreign entity.
Definition.
Are you aware of Wuhan lab conducting that type of research?
No.
Okay.
Peter Daszak's denial was categorical. He went on to assert that EcoHealth Alliance never has and did not fund gain-of-function research by definition. But this denial hinged on a highly debated bureaucratic share, a game of semantic definitions. Daszak's defense relies on a narrow administrative interpretation of the federal regulations. His argument was simple. Because the Wuhan lab was researching bat coronavirus, and because these viruses were not known human pathogens at the time. So any genetic modification that enhanced their replication or lethality did not technically trigger the NIH's high-level P3CO oversight framework. He testified.
Because the work we were doing was on bat coronaviruses, it was not covered by those rules. It was not considered of any risk to human health because they've never been shown to infect people. The NIH wrote to us, and I have the letter here, and said your work is not gain of function and can move ahead.
But his defense conflated two entirely different concepts. Whether an experiment produced an enhanced pathogen in the real biological war, and whether it met the bureaucratically negotiated threshold of an administrative checklist. And that administrative shield was about to be shattered by the scientific community itself. Regardless of administrative labels, the hard biological data submitted by the Wuhan Institute of Virology in their own Year 5 progress report tells an undeniable story. In a highly controversial experiment, WIV researchers constructed chimeric viruses by splicing different spike proteins onto the WIV1 viral backbone, and then exposed the humanized mice, genetically engineered to possess human-like lung receptors. Expose these humanized mice with these new strains of virus. The survival data was striking. Mice infected with the natural wild-type WIV virus had a survival rate of 71.4%, while mice infected with the engineered chimeric strain, the WIV1 SHC014, saw their survival rate plummet to just 25%. So a threefold increase in lethality. In the real world, WIV had engineered a virus far more lethal to human cells than its natural counterpart. So when congressional investigators presented this data to the nation's leading scientific and administrative authorities, they directly challenged Daszak's narrative. Dr. Lawrence Tabak, Principal Deputy Director of the NIH, admitted under oath, if you are using the broad generic definition, yes, this is an example of gain-of-function research. And Dr. Ralph Baric, the pioneer of the coronavirus genetic engineering, was even more definitive. That is absolutely a gain-of-function phenotype. You can't argue with that. When confronted with Baric and Tabak's testimonies, Daszak fell back on bureaucracy.
Well, I have a letter from NIH that says our work is not gain-of-function. You have testimony from Dr. Baric who says absolutely it was. Both are out there. I mean, I tend to go with the regulatory authority on this, which is NIH.
So unable to dispute the biological reality, Daszak retreated behind an administrative rubber stamp, exposing the vast chasm between the scientific risk and the bureaucratic compliance. But Daszak's congressional testimony did more than expose a semantic loophole. It revealed a staggering informational black hole at the heart of the American global pathogen surveillance. Under intense questioning from Chairman Comer, Daszak was forced to admit the severe limitation of his own oversight.
To your knowledge, did the Wuhan Institute conduct coronavirus research that did not involve EcoHealth?
Yes.
So is it possible the Wuhan Institute has viruses or conducted experiments that they never published?
Yes.
So Daszak went even further, admitting
Okay, so it's possible that they have hidden some viruses from us that we don't know about, yes.
Right.
Of course.
I appreciate that.
this admission completely undermines the logic foundation of EcoHealth's defense. On one hand, Daszak spent years publicly assuring global media that the Wuhan lab was entirely transparent and could not have leaked any high-risk virus. But on the other hand, under oath, he conceded that WIV conducted vast independent research, potentially high virus from him, and never allowed him to see their complete database or the raw laboratory notebooks. His defense of no gain of function and no leak was not based on comprehensive oversight. It was based on his own lack of knowledge. The United States had paid millions of dollars only to end up with a partner kept entirely in the dark. This loss of oversight extended beyond physical samples to the digital realm. On September 12, 2019, just weeks before the recognized outbreak of COVID-19, the primary pathogen database at the Wuhan Institute of Virology was abruptly taken offline, cutting off global access to years of joint research. When the pandemic struck and NIH demanded the raw sequencing data, Daszak had nothing to give. Dr. Tabak actually confirmed that Daszak's only resource was to call WIV researchers for verbal verification, a process Tabak deemed entirely unacceptable for federal compliance. And internal emails from EcoHealth show why the US has zero leverage. In April 2020, as USAID officials prepare to upload genetic sequence to GenBank, EcoHealth's China project coordinator Li Hongying actually warned in an email. In China, any publication of data related to novel infectious disease, including COVID-19, must be reviewed and officially approved by the Chinese partner institution and government authorities. So, US funds pay for the work, but the foreign state held veto power over whether the world could see the genomic sequence of potential pandemic threats. This helps explain the highly controversial structure of the 2021 World Health Organization investigation in Wuhan. The Chinese government exercised veto power over the international team, rejecting 3 top-tier US government scientists, but greenlighting exactly one American, Peter Daszak. The lead investigator sent to audit the Wuhan lab was its primary financial partner, co-author, and defender. So this profound conflict of interest casts a long shadow over the WHO's early findings that the laboratory leak was extremely unlikely. By January 2025, the US government had officially imposed a 5-year government-wide debarment on Peter Daszak and EcoHealth Alliance, cutting off all federal fundings and leaving their scientific credibility in ruins. But administrative banishment may only be the beginning. Well, to be absolutely clear, as of today, the US Department of Justice has not filed any criminal charges against Peter Daszak or EcoHealth Alliance. This analysis is based strictly on public court filings, congressional transcripts, and the federal conspiracy statutes. However, legal experts point out that Daszak faces severe potential exposure in 2 distinct areas. First one is false statements and perjury. Daszak testified under oath that WIV performed no gain-of-function research under his watch. So if federal prosecutors can establish that Daszak possessed contemporaneous written knowledge that contradict his testimony, he could face federal charges for making false statements to Congress, a felony carrying up to 5 years in prison. The second one is the domino effect of David Moran's guilty plea. So in our first episode, we saw Dr. David Moran's plea guilty to federal conspiracy. So in the indictment, a co-conspirator designed as co-conspirator 1 matches Peter Daszak's description in every detail, including the Napa Valley wine and the handwritten card thanking Moran for his behind-the-scenes shenanigans. To avoid dying in a federal prison, the 78-year-old Moran agreed to fully cooperate with prosecutors, and his private communications and personal testimonies are now in the hands of the Department of Justice, providing a direct roadmap into Daszak's actual stage of knowledge and involvement. So under federal conspiracy law, once a co-conspirator pleads guilty and cooperates, the legal share for the remaining players becomes perilously thin. A taxpayers funded virus repository locked behind foreign gates, a missing database, and a scientific establishment turning on itself under the threat of federal indictments. But the conspiracy to evade federal records went much higher than the rogue advisor and the New York nonprofit. In April 2020, as the pandemic raged and Moran and Daszak scrambled to move their communication to private Gmail accounts, Moran actually wrote, "Tony is now fully aware of this and is, I'm told, doing some damage control." What damage was Anthony Fauci trying to control? In our next program, we will dig into this further. Well, thank you for watching this episode, and please subscribe our program. We'll see you next time.